Don't miss this conversation. Thursday, October 12th, live from 5 to 7 p.m. with an encore performance from 7 to 9 p.m. only on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
One, two, three, yeah. I'm gonna try to keep it coming. Things ain't always smooth, but I'll be alright as long as I can find the groove. Yes, I will. Yeah. Somehow I know that I can make it. You seem to like my style. Don't you worry, I'm gonna be around a while. Yes, I will. I'm just happy to see you talk to me back in style again.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit TheTavisSmileyShow.com. That's TheTavisSmileyShow.com or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, a young girl is born in the Philippines, earns a law degree to practice both there and in New York, falls in love with a guy named Reginald Lewis, who ends up being the first African-American to acquire a multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation. She becomes a leading philanthropist. Loida Lewis joins us live in the studio today to talk about the legacy of Reginald Lewis and her story of love, marriage, motherhood, and running a billion-dollar empire. And if you don't know who Reginald Lewis is, Google it right quick before we get to hour two for that conversation. He is iconic. Long before Byron Allen and all these other Oprah and so many others buying and acquiring companies, there was Reginald Lewis, and we'll talk to his widow, Loida Lewis, today in hour two about his legacy and her stories, I said, of love, marriage, motherhood, and running now this billion-dollar empire. In our third hour, new census data reveals that in the richest nation in the history of the world, the rise in poverty is stunning. And stunning, by the way, is their word, not mine. We'll talk about it with the director of the Blum Initiative on Global and Regional Poverty at UC Riverside, David Brady, in hour three. But in this first hour today, let's talk politics with two guests. On the B side of this hour, we'll be joined by Kayla Lacey, politics reporter, that is, with The Intercept. But we begin today's program with the national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine, our friend John Nichols. John, how are you today, sir?
I'm very good. I'm glad to be with you on this day.
It's good to have you on. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. I'm glad we got these 30 minutes. There are a number of trending stories, but nothing trending more in the world, obviously, than this Israeli war. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, said a few days ago, we are at war, and the whole world is caught up in this drama once again in the Middle East. Don't need to color this first question too much. What's your read of what we are witnessing in the Middle East right now?
Horror.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, we could try and wrap a lot of words around it, but what we're witnessing is horrific. We have seen the brutal murder of young people who went to a dance concert, right, who went to a rave. We've seen the brutal murder of old folks in their kibbutzes. And now we are seeing the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza, which will cause the deaths of many innocent Palestinians. So in a matter of hours, we're seeing, again, innocent Jews, Muslims, and Christians dying in a conflict that the whole world has been terribly irresponsible in not making peace a more urgent priority.
Mm-hmm. When you say the whole world's been irresponsible, unpack that for me a bit, John.
Sure. Look, we know the crisis of the Middle East, right? This is not news. This is something you and I are not very young people anymore, Tavis,
Mm-hmm.
and this has been our entire life,
Mm-hmm.
right? This has been a reality, and we have seen people at times take a period of time and say, well, we're going to try and achieve peace. And sometimes it's an American leader, sometimes it's a European leader, sometimes it's a leader from a non-aligned nation. Different folks have tried. But invariably they tend to move away, right? They tend to say, oh, this is really tough. This is hard. And as a result, they often tend to throw money into the region, right? To take a side, to send weapons there. But the actual peacemaking, the hard work of peacemaking, which you did see play out, by the way, in Northern Ireland. It has been done in places around the world. I think there's been too weak a commitment to it. And I, of course, will recognize Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, sure.
Because Jimmy Carter did commit to it at great sacrifice. In fact, it may have been one of the many things that cost him his presidency. But he committed to it, and he did show us that if you make it an immense priority, you can bring people together and actually achieve peace agreements.
When we come forward, I'm going to go right back to Jimmy Carter because I remember this vividly. Jimmy Carter, of course, 99 years of age now, and he is home in hospice care. And for a few days, many were just on a death watch to see when Jimmy Carter was going to pass away after the announcement he was going home. Didn't want to spend any more time in hospitals, wanted to spend his remaining days at home. So we thought a few months ago that meant Jimmy Carter was going to die immediately. Jimmy Carter is still holding on at 99. But I've been honored in my career to have any number of conversations with President Carter. He always puts me on his list when he comes to Los Angeles. And so we've had countless dialogues over the years, public and private. And one of those conversations, John, was a few years ago when Jimmy Carter got himself in a whole lot of trouble for calling the situation in Palestine apartheid. So here's a president who is a Christian himself. As president, supported Israel, as every other president does of this country. But he called this situation apartheid, and all hell broke loose when Jimmy Carter did that. And here he was in L.A. defending himself on my program. I want to talk about that word apartheid that Jimmy Carter used then and whether or not it is appropriate today. It's always difficult and tricky when you have these conversations about Israel and Palestine. People get in their feelings. Legitimately, I understand that. But it's also a question about who the players are. And every time this seems to happen, certainly in our recent lifetimes, John, Bibi Netanyahu is always at the center of it. And I just think Bibi is the wrong guy. We'll talk about that and a great deal more when we come forward with John Nichols on Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Escalade IQ. This the intro to the all-electric Cadillac perfected like Zoom. And on a full charge, you get 450 miles without the stop haiku. This is what I do. Daddy fat intellect since 92. Linked all the way back, panoramic roof. Come with 24-inch rim standard. Ooh, why? Shawty don't kill him. Cadillac diamond in the back, cold chillin'. And when I'm on attack, on the track is no ceiling. Sky's the limit. You hear me? Straight drop, no parachutes. Lay lines like a longitude and latitude. Deal it, beloved, clearly we're hustling. Bussin', truckin'. Cadillac, Cadillac.
For more on the Escalade IQ, visit Cadillac.com.
Available late 2024. GM estimate 450-mile range. On a full charge based on development testing and/or analytical projection. Consistent with SCHA 1634 revision 2017 MCT. Range subject to change prior to production. Annual rates may vary based on service factors, including ambience temperature, terrain, battery age, and condition loading, and how you use and maintain your vehicle.
Happy birthday, Metro K-Line. Whether traveling for business or pleasure, it's time you made today a K-Line day. The K-Line can connect you with fun, food, friends, and family from Crenshaw to Inglewood in one safe, clean, comfortable ride. Take the K-Line today and experience the diversity that makes LA such a great place to live, work, and play. Make it a K-Line day. Go Metro. Visit metro.net/K-Line.
What's up? I'm Danelle Riley, FAMU alumni and creator of the HBCU Culture Shop. I am so proud of my new partnership with Black Beyond Measure and Target. They help me elevate community pride with my HBCU designs and continue to support Black creators and entrepreneurs with Target HBCU challenges, scholarship programs, and campus collaborations. Let's come together this homecoming season and beyond. Shop my brand and discover other Black-owned products at target.com/blackbeyondmeasure.
For all of us, this generation and the next, there is simply no place in our lives for litter. And yet, it's everywhere we look. And unfortunately, it does belong to all of us. So, let's come together and create a litter-free, clean California, once and for all. Remember to properly dispose of your trash and recycling. Secure truckloads with tarps to keep debris from flying out. Clean out your car when you're at a gas station. Take pride in your community by organizing a cleanup event. Or join a cleanup event near you. Zero litter is the goal. Join us at cleanca.com. That's cleanca.com. Let's do it together. Brought to you by Caltrans. cleanca.com.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley in conversation with John Nichols, the national affairs correspondent for The Nation magazine, talking here at the onset of today's program about the one topic that the whole world is talking about, the conflict in the Middle East, the Israeli war right about now. Day 4, by my count, and Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi, as they call him in Israel, the prime minister, once again, of that nation, said days ago, we are at war, and all hell has broken loose since then. You mentioned Jimmy Carter, John Nicholson, so I sort of opined on my relationship with him over the years, and he and I have had any number of conversations about a variety of subjects, but none more pressing, I should say, than the Middle East. To your point, you and I have been at this a long time in this field of media and journalism, and so this is not our first rodeo, our first conversation, obviously, about the state of things in the Middle East. Jimmy Carter, some years ago, as you may recall, got himself in a lot of trouble when he referred to this situation in the Middle East, certainly with regard to Palestine, as an apartheid situation, compared it to what we all know and saw in South Africa. And he caught a beat down, Jimmy Carter did. Here's a Nobel Peace Prize recipient, by the way, a Nobel Peace Prize recipient who uses a phrase like that, and again, they went in on Jimmy Carter. And in this moment, I am reminded that this is a hard conversation. Let me put it another way. It's a hard conversation that requires some heart answers, hard questions that require heart answers, and we can never seem to get to the heart of the matter. I think you were intimating that earlier. But in retrospect, what do you make of Jimmy Carter's comment then, since you raised his name, and the reality of the situation on the ground in the Middle East right now?
Sure. I interviewed President Carter a number of times, as you did as well, and have, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do it again.
Yes.
I find him one of the most resilient men in the world, and I'll just briefly say that when he did go into hospice, people said to me, "Do you want to write some reflection on Jimmy Carter?" And I said, "Not right away. I anticipate he's going to be with us for quite a while yet."
Yeah, he is.
This is a guy who had surgery, was having intense surgery, and was out building houses the next day.
That's right.
So look, I have a great deal of respect for him. I think that comes through in my comments, and we have talked about these issues at great length. And I can tell you, he is a serious man. Mm-hmm. He is a scholar and a student. He didn't form his opinions about the Middle East casually, and he didn't go there, for a quick trip and then come back and write a book. Mm-hmm. He consulted intensely with people in the Middle East and, frankly, people in South Africa before he used that term. And whether you agree with it or not, it's important to understand why he chose to use it. I asked him. And I remember him saying, and I'll paraphrase here, obviously, that he felt he needed to use a term that would cause people to, kind of jump out of their chair, right? Mm-hmm. And would force a debate. And this is coming from a man who has great regard for Israel, great regard for Palestine, who knows the great religions of the region and knows the people of the region. And I believe he used that term to try and force us to take seriously what's going on there, right? Yeah. And to take seriously what's happening on the ground. And frankly, to get us to say, whether we like the term or not, we've got to take this more seriously. We have to try and resolve it, right? And I fear that that the kind of blowback that Carter got for using that term continues to cause many major politicians to be cautious.
Yeah,
way too cautious in their language.
And that's the issue I was pushing toward. And so here I used the word prescient earlier. That's what you are. You are prescient. Jimmy Carter was pressing. You are prescient, because that's exactly where I wanted to go. There is no issue that is as volatile as this issue. No global issue as volatile as this issue for politicians around the globe. And even in this country, given that we have been an ally of Israel and have always sided with Israel, no matter what the conflict is, we side with Israel. We give them billions of dollars in aid. The Jewish lobby is as powerful as any lobby in Washington. Bibi Netanyahu comes over here and gets whatever he wants anytime he wants it. So there's no question about that. And that's not being unfair. That's just being accurate. Israel gets what it wants from the United States government. That relationship is cemented, has been for a long time. And in that regard, I wonder whether or not it's ever possible to have a conversation that is fundamentally fair, if I can use that phrase, John, given our position on this particular issue, given our relationship with Israel, whether or not it's ever possible to see any other side, whether or not it's possible to ever have a conversation that's rooted in fairness given our political position, and whether or not that in many respects then ends up, what's the word I'm looking for, sort of hamstringing U.S. politicians. Does that make sense?
Much of what you say makes sense, but let me tell you, at the bottom line, yes, it's possible.
Okay.
It has to be possible. If it is not, then what we saw on Saturday, which was, as we began by saying, horrific, what we saw on Saturday we'll see again in some other form, in some other way, and what we're seeing today we'll see again in some other form, in some other way. So yes, it has to be possible. And again, we talked about Jimmy Carter. Remember, he got the leaders from the Middle East, people who had, sworn hatreds of one another, to Camp David, and they forged peace. Not the perfect peace, but they did it. So yes, the possibility is there. Let me offer one notion.
Sure.
When you're talking about different lobbies and things like that, I would emphasize now that we have many different messages coming from the Jewish community, and there is J Street now, a group that is very, very critical of many Israeli policies, very, very critical of Netanyahu. And it's a real important force, I think, in Washington. Yes, you still have AIPAC and other groups, other Israeli-aligned groups that take the more right-wing stance or the more pro-Netanyahu stance. But there's diversity, and that diversity in opinion, in Jewish opinion, and in Muslim and Christian and Arab opinion, I think is being heard more and more in Washington.
Yeah.
The current moment makes it hard, right?
Yeah.
Of course it's difficult. But I will tell you, as somebody who's covered these issues for a long time, I am hearing more diversity of opinion and more honest dialogue. I'm not naive. I don't put on rose-colored glasses about any of this. But I believe that we are in a hopeful moment. And that hopeful moment is very hard to see and very hard to wrap our heads around today, of course. But the fact of the matter is there are people on Capitol Hill who are more willing to wrestle with these issues than in the past. And I will point out that in 2019, in the presidential debate, Bernie Sanders affirmatively brought up the condition of Palestinians in the debate, right? He wasn't dragged into it. He referenced it because he said it was relevant to the discussion, right? And that was a historic moment, but an important moment. And I would say others are doing that as well. And I think it's important to recognize you can care for Israel deeply.
Yeah.
You can respect these three great Abrahamic religions. And you can, at the same time, recognize the condition of the Palestinians, recognize that Hamas is not Palestine, and that there are Palestinians who are deeply committed to nonviolence, to peace, just as there are Israelis who are deeply committed to nonviolence and to peace. And if I can recommend one thing, it's simply this. I urge people to read Haaretz, the very prominent Israeli newspaper, which gives a perspective on this, which is sharply critical of Netanyahu. And in fact, in recent days has carried articles saying that Netanyahu should resign.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is great diversity of opinion in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Our problem is, and we're doing it right now, and I'm going to pat us both on the back, but our problem is that too often that diversity is not reflected in U.S. media or in U.S. political discourse. Our job is to make sure it is reflected.
No question about that. I was at dinner a couple of days ago, and this issue came up, and I was reminded of a conversation. Again, I've been so fortunate, so blessed in my career. I've talked to Jimmy Carter many times, but I've also interviewed Bibi Netanyahu. And he and I went at it one day, man. We had a knock.
He can do that.
Yeah. Bibi's a tough guy, man. We had a knockdown, drag out. The prime minister and yours truly went at it one day about this situation in the Middle East, and I'll leave that where it is for now. But I'll just say this: what made me go off the rails, and then he responded in kind, and we just had to get a knockdown, drag out. Was I raised some Kingian, as in MLK, some Kingian questions with him about the power of love and negotiation and et cetera, et cetera. And Bibi shot back at me, John. Tavis, with all due respect, Dr. King never knew Hamas. With all due respect, Dr. King never knew Hezbollah. And I looked at him, and I almost forgot I was talking to a head of state. I said, "Have you lost your mind, man? Are you serious?"
King knew,
exactly.
King knew violent players.
Yes.
And recognized the danger. No, you're look, and I've spent a lot of my career, a lot of my life in Israel and Palestine. I've reported from both places.
Yeah.
I've been in the halls of Knesset. I've been there when Bibi Netanyahu was, negotiating with people and arguing with people. And all I will emphasize is, as somebody who spent a lot of time there, I've also seen people who passionately disagree with Bibi Netanyahu in Israeli politics.
Yeah.
Right? And that's all I'm saying is that within the Palestinian community, I have been with great advocates for peace who are in the Gandhian tradition, in the King tradition. And in the Israeli community, I have been with great advocates for peace who are in the Gandhian tradition, in the King tradition. And we Americans need to know that. We need to know that those people are there, and we need to lift them up, and we need to say, these are the people we want to work with. These are the people who we want to amplify and empower, because the people who are striving for peace in the Middle East need allies.
Yeah.
They need support.
Yeah.
And they get beat up in their own communities. They get beat up sometimes internationally. I mean, it's hard. And yet, at the end of the day, there are these profiles in courage. And all I'm saying is, that's why I recommend reading Haaretz. That's why I recommend, looking more broadly, because what you're going to hear is that there are an awful lot of people whose hearts are broken now because of the murders of innocent Israelis and because of the deaths of innocent Palestinians.
Yeah, it is. Your comments now remind me of what it was like to travel the world, as many of us did during the era of Donald Trump. And what you find yourself doing as an American traveling the world during the era of Donald Trump is explain to folk around the world that, yes, he's our president, but everybody does not agree with this guy. I mean, there are a whole lot of Americans who wish he were not the president. And you can't necessarily see that when you're living in other parts of the globe, because you just see Donald Trump as the representative of the U.S. government, and indeed he was for those 4 years. But you have to remind people, no. Yes, he's the president. And then they start asking, well, how did he become the president if most Americans don't like this guy, don't agree? That's a whole other conversation about how democracy works in this country, right? Or it's supposed to work, at least. And so it's no different than with Bibi Netanyahu. You cannot make the assumption that because Bibi Netanyahu speaks as the prime minister of that country, that there aren't folk inside of Israel who absolutely disagree with his approach, not just now, but for years. He's been prime minister a number of times. He loses and he bounces back again. And so there are questions that one could ask the Israeli people about why Bibi keeps being the guy. But as I said earlier, I believe that over the course of years now, we've had the wrong players at the table to address this issue. And I frankly believe that Bibi Netanyahu is one of the wrong players. That's just my assessment. No matter what you think of what's happening in the Middle East, I just think the wrong players are too often at the table when these moments happen. I digress in that regard. I've got just 2 minutes left here, John. This is really not fair to do. I promise I want to have you back because I really want to spend an hour just on this issue. But you saw the story, and more than the story, you cover this stuff, so you know this huge story in the New York Times the other day that just has me, my skin has just been, I've been boiling about this story because, again, it's nothing we don't know. But the headline was that fearing third-party spoilers versus Trump, Biden allies are trying to squash them. So all the folk around the president are trying to just kill off, trying to squash, trying to suffocate anybody running as a third-party candidate, be it Cornel West or Robert Kennedy Jr. or Marianne Williamson or anybody else. They're trying to just squash and kill with negative stories, negative research, everything they can do. They want to kill off these third-party candidates because they believe, of course, it's going to hurt them against Trump. You know how this works. I know how it works, but there's something fundamentally anti-democratic about their behavior. Give me what you can in 90 seconds, and we'll continue next time you're back on. John, did I lose you? John.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Go ahead. Give me. I got about 45 seconds. Give me your take on it right quick. We'll continue though. I think John is his phone is cutting it out on me. John,
brother, can you hear me? I
can hear you now. Yeah, I got a few seconds. You want to give me a quick take on that?
Few seconds. We got to do an hour on this because
yes.
People have the right to run for president of the United States. And I'll tell you something. Democrats who think they want to knock out third parties are missing the point. Mm-hmm. The point is, if there's a third party running and it's taking votes from you, maybe you ought to think about what you're saying. Maybe you ought to think about your message.
There you
right?
go.
I could go on for hours, but that's my core assessment.
In 30 seconds, you nailed it, and that's why we're going to spend an hour. So expect a phone call from me. I actually want to do a roundtable on this. I'm going to do a panel with a few people just addressing this issue because, the Democratic Party's just lost their minds. This is not the way to deal with third-party candidates, to just try to kill people and squash them. I can't stand that nonsense. We'll come back to that with John Nichols and a few others in the coming days, so stay tuned to this program for that dialogue about the ways that the Democratic Party, I think, is misbehaving. For now, we thank John Nichols more when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. Ranked number 45 on the Heavy 100 list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. Benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Families of Americans missing in Israel are asking the U.S. government to act. Speaking in Tel Aviv on Tuesday, families described the last messages received from loved ones after the Palestinian militant group Hamas attacked Israel over the weekend. One mother said she knew the last message she got from her son saying, "I'm sorry," meant something had happened that would cause her worry. In Mississippi, independent candidate Gwendolyn Gray announced on Monday that she's withdrawing from the governor's race and throwing her support behind Democrat Brandon Presley. In a written statement, Gray, who is African American, said her endorsement of Presley was because of his promise to work to expand Medicaid in Mississippi. Gray's withdrawal also comes less than 1 month before the November 7th general election. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
You'll see that top and diamond bar in the 57 north as you get up to the 60. A crash onto the right shoulder. You're on and off the brakes starting around D-Bar Boulevard. Pico Rivera Whittier, that 605 south at Washington. That's a crash onto the right side. Sticking up the drive from Rose Hills Road. Southgate on the 710 north at Imperial Highway. Crash from earlier onto the right shoulder. Kind of no go from Rosecrans. Boyle Heights on the 10 west. Approaching Soto Street. A wreck clear to the right side, but coming away from the 710 things are busy. Clear that stalled vehicle to Toluca Lake Studio City on the 134 west near the 101-170. That was in the carpool lane. That's gone, but still that busy drive as far back as Hollywood Way, Alameda.
Hey, if you're thinking of getting the latest iPhone, you need to stop and check out the wireless offer from Boost Infinite. For more, just pick up your phone and dial pound 250 and say Boost Infinite. That's pound 250 and Boost Infinite. You'll have the option to receive a one-time auto-dialed text message from this station's network.
Lowe's knows fall is the perfect time for outdoor projects. Right now, you can keep your yard looking its best and save. Take care of leaves with leaf blowers starting at just $89.98. Lowe's knows home improvement. While supplies last, see store for details.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Dodgers are in trouble. They lose at home again to the Arizona Diamondbacks, this time by 2. The Dodgers are on the verge of elimination in the best-of-5 series. If the Diamondbacks win Game 3 Wednesday night in Phoenix, the Dodgers are done for the season. Some sad numbers affecting the Dodgers in the first 2 games. Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, their top 2 hitters, are a combined 1 for 13 at the plate. The Dodgers are 2 for 12 with runners in scoring position and have stranded 13 base runners. The Lakers beat Brooklyn by 3 last night in a preseason game in Vegas. LeBron and Anthony Davis played the first half before getting the rest of the night off. LeBron had 10 points and 5 assists. The Clippers take on Utah tonight in Seattle. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
No young person should ever have to worry about having a safe place to sleep at night, or whether anyone cares about them.
But the reality is, 1 in 10 young adults will experience a form of homelessness this year.
For over 50 years, Covenant House has been helping youth in crisis and giving them the support and tools they need to succeed in life. To learn more, go to covenanthouse.org today. Thank you for caring.
Only 1 in 5 people with autism are employed, despite many having the skill set and desire to work.
Maybe it's because employers don't know what kind of jobs they can do. Like, what about a programmer?
That's a job for someone with autism.
How about a healthcare worker?
Yep, that is too. People with autism can do a lot of different jobs, but often get overlooked due to outdated stigmas. Introducing WIN by Autism Speaks. We help businesses lead the way in inclusive hiring.
What about a ranch hand?
To learn more, go to autismspeaks.org/win.
At Susan G. Komen, we believe that ending breast cancer needs all of us working together. Because if you've just been diagnosed and don't know where to turn, we've got you. If you can't afford the treatment you need, we've got you. And if you are driven to honor the loved one you've just lost, we have a place for you here. Because of you, we're supporting those who need help today while tirelessly searching for tomorrow's cures. Visit Komen.org and be a part of our Susan G. Komen community today.
Hey, everything okay?
Yes, I'm fine.
Honey. Hey, I'm here for you. Tell me about school today.
When kids can't find the right words, music can help them sound it out. Talk to the kids in your life about their emotional well-being. Find tools and resources at sounditouttogether.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Pivotal Ventures.
Let's get back to more of Tavis Smiley right now.
Tavis Smiley in dialogue with John Nichols moments ago from The Nation magazine. Now we move to Kayla Lacey, who's politics reporter at The Intercept. We're talking all politics in this first hour, and God knows there's a whole lot to unpack if I had more time even. Kayla, good to have you on this program. How are you today?
Thank you, Tavis. I'm well. How are you doing?
If I complained out being in, great. It's great to have you on, and I'm glad we have these minutes to unpack a few things that are trending. John and I just had a interesting conversation, spirited conversation, in-depth conversation about what's happening in the Middle East. So we'll dispense of that for the moment. We just spent 30 minutes sort of talking about that. But near the end of our conversation, I pivoted, and I told John I'd have to have him back because I think I'm going to do a roundtable on this issue because it's so big and there's so many varying points of view on this. But this notion that is talked about in Washington right now, ad infinitum, ad nauseum, about what the Democratic Party is doing. Powerful, very powerful allies of President Biden are aggressively working, Kayla, as you know, to stop third-party and independent presidential candidacies. They fear that an outside bid could cost Democrats, cost the president his reelection because they believe, once again, that this election is going to come down to a few percentage points in some key battleground states. So they are doing everything they can literally to destroy Cornel West, to destroy Robert Kennedy Jr., Marianne Williamson, anybody. And there are others who are thinking about running for president. There's a party called No Labels, as you know, that's going to put up a candidate, independent, to run against Joe Biden, to run for president. And so this effort that Democrats are now engaged in to just out and out destroy indiscriminately these third-party candidates is a topic that's gaining some steam. Again, I want to spend some time on it. But what's your read on the way the Democrats are behaving or misbehaving as I see it?
So I think, there's a lot of repeat worry that we heard in the 2016 election. A lot of people blamed, a third-party candidacy there for Trump's win. But I think that what's important to note is, and I think you brought this up at the end of your conversation with John, instead of sort of using limited crucial resources on engaging voters who might be disenchanted with the system or figuring out why people might be attracted to a third-party candidate and sort of tapping into that. We've seen, cycle after cycle, the Democrats rely on what they think is the easiest option, which is suppressing forms of dissent and differing political opinions. I think, the calculation is often that there's this sort of mythical voter in the middle who is the most important to tailor the political messaging to, and that comes at the cost of letting people who might be appealed to by a third-party candidate, throwing them by the wayside. Democrats often say this is, the question of a couple points that could shift the presidential election. But I think you could easily make the argument that if they were to tailor policies to people who might be leaving the party,
That's right.
you could make up whatever, whatever. Yeah.
No.
One thing I saw that was interesting. Yeah, I'll just say this. I mean, I saw John Fetterman made an interesting comment about the potential of a third party candidacy, which I found kind of ironic because if you rewind to his Democratic primary, he was really seen in a lot of ways as the outsider candidate to, who the Democrats had sort of anointed in Connor Lamb, and he ended up winning and coming into the Senate and helping to boost Biden's tail, his tails in Pennsylvania. So it's kind of ironic some of the people who you see coming out with opposition to potential third-party candidates in this scenario.
Part of what's troubling me about this story, additionally, Kayla, is that the mainstream media has bought into this language of spoiler. When you read a headline in the New York Times that says, fearing third-party spoilers versus Trump, Biden allies try to squash them. I hate that word spoiler. Everybody in this country who's 35 years of age and a U.S. citizen has the right, if they choose, to run for president. Back to John Nichols' point, if folk are running as third-party candidates, maybe it's your message. Maybe you should think about that. To your point, maybe you should think about why people are leaving or not excited about supporting your candidacy. But to call these persons spoilers just annoys me to no end. For starters, you can't spoil nothing that's already rotten. Our system is rotten to the core. And if it's already rotten, how you going to call it? You can't use the word spoil, but it just reminds me of the way the mainstream media can grab a term or use a phrase that frames the conversation unjustly, unfairly for all of us, and we just buy into their language because it's used repeatedly in headlines in the New York Times and other places where these persons are regarded as spoilers. Again, as if they don't have a right to run, as if they aren't raising money or getting votes or getting on ballots because somebody believes in their candidacy. And this notion that now is not the right time to be doing this, these are unusual times and we don't want Donald Trump. I understand that. But by that logic, there would never be a good time to launch a third-party bid. It's just a bankrupt argument all the way around. But this notion of calling them spoilers, as you can tell, gets under my skin.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the Biden administration, and this is not unique to them, but they have sort of a very traditional style of politics where doing the least controversial thing or doing the least possible while keeping the base, the quote unquote base happy in their eyes is the best strategy to reelection. And I think that, when you have people proposing alternative pathways, alternative platforms that potentially could threaten, their sort of calm waters that they've sort of been able to ride on. I think instead of, what might be a rational decision-making response to try to figure out what they can do better, I think their calculation is that it's best not to rock the boat, right?
And they're doing, I mean, this recent story points out all the oppo research they're doing. Politics, you cover this, opposition research. So they're digging into Cornell's past and digging into Bobby Kennedy's past. And again, it's politics. I ain't naive. I ain't stuck on stupid. The point is they are going hard. As hard on Trump as they are, even harder on these guys. Frankly, they know who Trump is, but they are determined to just kill off Kennedy and West and anybody else who is thinking about no labels, which I don't. As I've said many times, any party that calls themselves no labels, you lost me from the very beginning. Because if you ain't got no labels, if you don't stand for nothing, I can't even rock with you. So that term no labels just kills me. But this effort by the Democratic Party and by all the persons around Joe Biden to try to kill off these candidates it's unacceptable. And one last thing, we'll move forward here. Not long ago, and he's a regular on this program, Jamie Harrison, the chair of the Democratic Party, comes on here fairly regularly, and Jamie and I are cool. No issues with Jamie per se. But when he was last on, I asked him this question, and he punted this thing. He did not want to address this question. And that is a story that was out at the time about various Democrats in various places and races across the country who will spend Democratic money to support a particular Republican candidate to get that person out of the way or to help that person win, depending on the race, because that's who they want to run against or that's who they don't want to run against. So it depends on what race you're talking. Are they trying to get somebody in who they want or get somebody out who they don't want to deal with? But it's Democrats spending money to support certain Republican candidates. So tell me where the integrity is in that. And on the other hand, then explain to me how you want to crush third-party candidates. It just makes no sense at all. I digress. We'll continue with Kayla Lacey from The Intercept when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. This is the Tavis Smiley Show.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
The Los Angeles Urban League helps African American and others in underserved communities achieve true social parity, economic self-reliance, and civil rights. For over 100 years, Los Angeles Urban League has ensured our communities have access to careers with living wages, opportunities to start and grow businesses, and clear pathways to personal and professional growth. Programs like BizCamp, Construction Career Academy, Bob Business Ready, and B-Warp. The Black Wealth Attainment and Retention Program are examples of the ongoing events designed to make our centennial mission to rebuild Black Wall Street right here in LA a reality. To sign up for our newsletter or to support the Los Angeles Urban League with your time, talent, and donations, visit laul.org. That's laul.org. The Los Angeles Urban League is a proud sponsor of Urban Family Focus, Saturdays at 7 a.m. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Now. We tend not to think about now. We dream about tomorrow, relive yesterday. But right now in front of us is victory over cancer. Right now, cancer research funded by the V Foundation is leading to better treatments and saving lives. Victory over cancer is there for the taking by you, because today's cancer research is tomorrow's victory. Learn more at v.org.
Don't give up. Don't ever give up.
As veterans, we're no strangers to helping others.
That's what we were taught, service before self.
But we do have one question for the veterans listening.
When was the last time you reached out for help?
If you or someone you know needs resources, whether it's for stress, finances, employment, or mental health, don't wait. Reach out.
Find more information at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
He's rooting for everybody black. Everybody black. More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
I am rooting for everybody black, including LaFonza Butler, who is now the United States Senator from the junior senator from the state of California. As you all know, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, appointed LaFonza Butler to finish out the unfinished term of Dianne Feinstein, who passed away, I guess a couple weeks ago. And so there's a black woman now in the United States Senate, and Kayla Lacey, politics reporter at The Intercept, and her team there did an interesting story about LaFonza Butler recently that sort of got my attention, and I wanted to ask her to sort of unpack what this story is about. Kayla, take it away.
We reported on some information about how LaFonza Butler had run this organization called Emily's List. This is one of the biggest, most important organizations that funds and backs women candidates who support abortion in congressional, federal, and other races. We had heard a couple weeks before the appointment that there had been layoffs at Emily's List, which cut a lot of their grassroots candidate outreach and training programs, which are pretty critical, ahead of a tight election year, as we've already discussed. And this was at the same time that the organization had also announced that it was going to commit, quote, tens of millions of dollars to supporting the reelection campaign of Vice President Kamala Harris in 2024, Harris being a close ally and confidant of Butler. Butler was a senior advisor to her presidential campaign. They've remained close friends. And so we reported sort of on the shifting of the priorities of Emily's List towards, reelecting what, some of the folks that we talked to, former staffers who spoke anonymously, just this idea that the position of a vice president is, of course, important, but it's not, the first thing that comes to mind, when you're talking about getting people out to vote. The vice president is on the ticket with the president. They sort of ride on their coattails. It's not the kind of thing that you hear people devoting tens of millions of dollars to in an election where there are lots of seats that are a little bit more tight on the margins that Democrats are concerned about in the next cycle. So that is sort of the gist of the story.
Yeah, but if one regards the vice president, in this case Kamala Harris, this black woman, if one regards her as the most powerful woman in the country, and Emily's List is about elevating powerful women, should we be surprised that they want to spend that kind of money to make sure she gets reelected?
No, not at all. And I think that's sort of the obvious response that Emily's List would have to this too, and that they did have in the story. I think the piece that is a little bit more interesting, at least to our readers and hopefully to some of your listeners, is that this shift came at a time when the organization was facing huge budgetary constraints that led them to cut a lot of these programs, and that in a situation like that, you could argue that there are races that might be more, have a more marginal benefit to having that money spent. And then the other flip side being, I think some people had raised eyebrows about the fact that Butler was such a close ally of Harris's. Yeah. Again, this is politics as usual. I don't think anything is surprising there. But then for her to be appointed to the Senate, there was reporting that she was not, the first, second, third, or fourth choice of California Governor Gavin Newsom. And so I think some people had questions about, how that decision came to be made.
You can read the story for yourself at The Intercept. It's called LaFonza Butler's Emily's List spends millions on Kamala Harris while laying off grassroots staff. That's the headline, authored by our guest right now, Kayla Lacey, politics reporter at The Intercept. Our remaining moments with her when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
What's up, party people? It's your favorite MC's favorite rapper, MC Light here. And we're celebrating 50 years of hip-hop, authentically powered by Cadillac. And we're going to take it way back to where it started. It was only fitting that hip-hop began with teenagers at a back-to-school jam in the rec room of a South Bronx apartment complex by an 18-year-old brother. By the way, I'm also sure he had a Cadillac parked outside. He noticed the energy on the dance floor when he switched between two turntables, extending the beats, repeating the breaks, and never losing the rhythms. And that was the birth of hip-hop. And from that moment, it took off.
For more on how Cadillac is celebrating hip-hop's 50th, visit Cadillac.com/audacity.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for education as a right, not a privilege. Charles R. Drew University of Medicine and Science is a private, non-profit, community-founded, student-centered university committed to cultivating diverse health profession leaders who are dedicated to social justice and health equity for underserved populations. CDU does this through outstanding education, clinical service, and community engagement. Recently, Charles Drew University made history by opening only the 5th medical school at an historically black university. Congratulations, South LA, and congratulations to the Dean of the medical school, Dr. Deborah Protho-Stith. CDU is now training doctors and providing $90 million in annual economic benefit to Watts and surrounding neighborhoods. To apply for medical school, get more information, or sign your child up for the Junior Doctors Saturday School program, visit cdrewu.edu. That's cdrewu.edu. At KBLA, we are dedicated to equity in education and ending healthcare apartheid. And we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This season, your coffee orders are getting warmer and your outfits are getting cozier. The world keeps changing, and so does COVID-19. That's why this season's COVID-19 shots have been updated. They're one of the best ways to help protect yourself against COVID-19. You can get a COVID-19 shot at the same visit as a flu shot if you're due for both, as recommended by the CDC. Talk to your healthcare provider to learn more and schedule at vaccines.gov. And don't forget to get extra cinnamon spice. Sponsored by Pfizer and BioNTech.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Kayla, let me bring this conversation full circle. I've only got 3 minutes left here, but it occurs to me that you've also done some reporting about AIPAC. We started this hour talking about the conflict in the Middle East, Israel and Palestine. John Nichols mentioned the name AIPAC. We know AIPAC to be the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. We talked about the power of the Jewish lobby in Washington. They are the country's most influential pro-Israel lobbying group. So this conversation comes full circle because you've done some reporting in the past about AIPAC and its Republican donors intentionally targeting progressive members of the Congressional Black Caucus with right-wing primary challenges, even as AIPAC has given money to some of the old line members of the Congressional Black Caucus. They've targeted members of the Squad, in part because the Squad members want to put certain restrictions on U.S. aid to Israel and the Jewish lobby in D.C., the AIPAC specifically, obviously doesn't like that. It's a fascinating dichotomy that AIPAC could give money to old line black Democrats in the CBC, but go after certain members of the Squad. It's sort of dividing the CBC, as it were. But you've done some reporting about that. Anything you want to add to that in the 2 minutes I have left here?
Absolutely, yeah. I would specify, this is definitely the pro-Israel lobby. There are other, progressive Jewish groups that have been really critical of AIPAC's spending and attacks on A, the only Palestinian American member of Congress, and B, some of the first and only black women in the caucus who are progressive on issues of Israel. The story that we wrote was really focusing on the fact that, Democrats who have been vocal and outspoken on the importance of protecting incumbents, particularly in the CBC, have been silent, when those attacks have come from AIPAC, which is a major funder of many CBC members, old and young. We reported that they've given, since the AIPAC started giving directly to federal candidates a few years ago, they've given at least, $3.5 million to CBC members. Mm-hmm. This is just since February 2022. And this is at a time when the CBC has been silent on efforts to oust members of their own caucus in primaries. And this is also at a time when AIPAC has, endorsed and stood behind, hundreds of Republican members who supported the attempted insurrection at the Capitol, have been supporting, violent anti-Semitic comments from members, actions from other members. And so the idea that this is really about Israel policy or supporting, Jewish constituents is pretty on its face, not the case.
Yep. I'm always asking my friends and my colleagues, what are you reading? What are you reading? You have to have an expansive reading list to come across stories that you would not otherwise see. So I ask my colleagues, I ask you, my listeners, what are you reading? I recommend putting The Intercept on your list of things to read where you find stories you might not see anyplace else. We thank the politics reporter at The Intercept, Kayla Lacey, for joining us today. Kayla, all the best to you. We'll do it again somewhere down the road.
Thanks, Tavis. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it as well. Hour 2 of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network family.